Are there dishes that can bring you right back to the 1970s in a single bite? These meals filled tables with bright colors, bold flavors, and the kind of comfort that anchored family life. What happens when the taste of that decade fades from memory? Chicken marbella in the 1970s was the sort of dish that could turn any ordinary dinner into something that felt like it belonged in a glossy cookbook spread. The combination of chicken baked with prunes, olives, capers, and white wine seemed bold for its time, a clear sign that American home cooking was leaning into more adventurous flavors. It was popularized by the Silver Palette cookbook, which quickly became a household name among those who loved entertaining. The prunes added a rich sweetness, the olives brought a briny contrast, and the capers tied it all together with a punchy tang, while the white wine deepened the sauce into something you wanted to mop up with crusty bread. The marinade was everything. It was often prepared a day ahead, letting the chicken soak in layers of flavor that baked into it beautifully. For many, this dish was a showpiece at dinner parties, the kind of thing you served when you wanted to impress without the fuss of a complicated recipe. It bridged the gap between old-world tradition and the emerging modern palate of the 1970s. Even now, its reputation as a dinner party classic remains, not because it is flashy, but because it is unforgettable once tasted. Monte Cristo sandwiches in the 1970s had a certain decadent charm that made them hard to resist, especially when spotted on a diner menu or at a brunch buffet. Stacked with layers of ham, turkey, and cheese, this sandwich went far beyond the usual cold cuts. The bread was dipped in an egg batter, much like French toast, then fried until golden, crisp on the outside but soft and melting within. A dusting of powdered sugar over the top added an unexpected sweetness that paired beautifully with the savory filling, especially when served with a side of jam or preserves for dipping. While it sounded indulgent, and it was, it also had a certain novelty that made it popular at mid-morning gatherings or late lunches. In the 1970s, people were experimenting more with combining sweet and savory, and the Monte Cristo fit that trend perfectly. It was both casual and extravagant, something you could find in upscale cafes or make at home for a weekend treat. Every bite was a mix of textures and flavors that felt just a little bit rebellious compared to the standard sandwich fare of the era, and that is exactly why it stayed in people's memories. Oyster stew was one of those 1970s dishes that felt timeless, yet its presence at holiday dinners gave it an extra air of occasion. Creamy, buttery, and rich, it was a warm and comforting way to begin a winter feast, often served in small bowls before the main course. The base started with fresh oysters and their liquor, gently cooked so they stayed tender rather than rubbery. Butter and cream were added generously, turning the broth into something velvety and indulgent. Seasonings were usually kept simple, just enough salt, pepper, and perhaps a dash of paprika to let the oysters shine. Many households reserved this dish for special occasions, not only because oysters were a treat, but because the ritual of making it was tied to family tradition. In coastal areas, it was almost a requirement for holiday meals, while inland families considered it an exotic offering. The 1970s emphasis on both comfort food and sophistication meant oyster stew fit right in, appealing to those who wanted familiar flavors elevated by quality ingredients. Served with a few crackers or a slice of buttered bread, it was a dish that could silence a lively table with that first warming spoonful. Cheese balls with nuts were an absolute staple at 1970s parties, the kind of appetizer that signaled the start of a night filled with chatter, music, and maybe a little dancing. Made from a base of cream cheese softened to perfection, they were mixed with herbs, shredded cheeses, and sometimes even a splash of Worcestershire sauce for depth. Once shaped into a neat sphere, the cheese ball was rolled in finely chopped nuts, often pecans or walnuts, which added both crunch and visual appeal. Placed in the center of a platter surrounded by crackers, it became an instant centerpiece. What made the cheese ball so beloved was its ease of preparation and versatility. Hosts could prepare it hours ahead, freeing them to focus on the rest of the evening. In the 1970s, when cocktail hours and casual gatherings were booming, this dish matched the mood perfectly, unfussy, shareable, and indulgent without being over the top. Guests would gather around, spreading generous portions onto crisp crackers, chatting as they went. It was part of the rhythm of the night, a signal that good company and good food were about to blend into hours of easygoing fun. Ratatouille in the 1970s was less about rustic French kitchens and more about showing off a colorful, health-conscious side to dinner. This vegetable medley, usually zucchini, eggplant, tomatoes, onions, and peppers, was slowly cooked until tender, with olive oil and herbs infusing every bite. It appealed to the decade's growing interest in lighter, plant-focused eating while still feeling indulgent. Many home cooks discovered it through cookbooks or television chefs who were introducing European recipes to American audiences. The beauty of ratatouille was in its flexibility. It could be served hot as a side, chilled as a salad, or even spooned over rice or pasta for a vegetarian main. In a time when bright, fresh dishes were gaining ground against heavy, cream-laden meals, ratatouille stood out with its vibrant colors and natural flavors. Its presentation, often layered or artfully arranged, also made it attractive for dinner parties, where appearance mattered almost as much as taste. In an era experimenting with international influences, ratatouille found a perfect niche, offering something new without straying too far from familiar vegetables. The result was a dish that felt modern yet comforting, a reflection of changing tastes in American kitchens. Cornish game. Hens were a hallmark of 1970s elegance, the kind of main course you brought out when you wanted each guest to feel special. These small birds, roasted whole, made for an impressive presentation, everyone having their own perfectly portioned main rather than slices carved from a larger roast. Seasoned simply or dressed up with herbs, citrus, or glazes, they roasted quickly and looked beautiful on the plate. Serving them was part of the appeal. Lifting the lid on a serving platter to reveal rows of golden brown hens was guaranteed to earn admiration. In the 1970s, when entertaining often leaned toward the theatrical, Cornish game hens fit right in. They were accessible in supermarkets yet carried an air of luxury, making them perfect for holiday dinners, anniversaries, or even an ambitious weeknight meal. Side dishes could be as simple as roasted vegetables or as elaborate as wild rice pilaf, but the hens always stole the show. For many home cooks, they symbolized the shift toward more individual, restaurant-style plating, a trend that still influences dinner parties today. They were a perfect blend of attainable glamour and hearty comfort. Broccoli rice casserole in the 1970s was the definition of comfort meeting convenience. Made with tender broccoli florets, fluffy rice, and a creamy sauce often built from condensed soup, it quickly became a go-to for potlucks and family dinners. Cheddar cheese was the common topping, melted into a bubbling golden layer that begged to be spooned through. It was the kind of dish that could stretch a small amount of ingredients into something that fed a crowd without feeling skimpy. The 1970s kitchen was full of casserole innovations, and this one stood out because it combined wholesome vegetables with the indulgence of cheese and creaminess. For busy parents, it could be assembled ahead of time, baked when needed, and served straight from the same dish, minimizing cleanup. For guests, it was familiar enough to be comforting but had just enough richness to feel like a treat. Whether on the Sunday table or at a church supper, broccoli rice casserole earned its place as a dependable classic. It spoke to the decade's love for one-dish meals that brought people together over something warm, hearty, and easy to share. Oven-fried chicken in the 1970s offered the crisp, golden satisfaction of traditional fried chicken without the hassle of deep frying. Coated in crushed cornflakes or seasoned breadcrumbs, the chicken baked in the oven until the coating was crunchy and the meat juicy. This method appealed to a decade increasingly interested in healthier approaches to familiar comfort foods. It also fit neatly into the era's preference for recipes that could be prepared ahead and left to cook while the host attended to guests. Oven-fried chicken became a staple for weeknight dinners and picnics alike, its portability making it perfect for outdoor gatherings. Many families embraced it as a less messy alternative to frying, avoiding the splatter and lingering oil smell. The cornflake crust added a distinctive flavor and texture that set it apart from other baked chicken recipes, and children especially loved its satisfying crunch. Paired with coleslaw, mashed potatoes, or corn on the cob, it captured the essence of a hearty, all-American meal. The dish's adaptability, allowing for different seasonings and coatings, kept it fresh in the rotation. It was proof that tradition could be updated without losing what made it special. Lemon chiffon pie in the 1970s was the kind of dessert that felt like a burst of sunshine after a heavy meal. Light, airy, and refreshingly tart, it was often made with a graham cracker or pastry crust that provided just the right contrast to the fluffy lemon filling. The texture was its hallmark, achieved by folding beaten egg whites into a lemon custard mixture, creating a melt-in-your-mouth experience. This pie was especially popular in the warmer months when its cool, citrusy flavor provided relief from the heat. Many home cooks prided themselves on perfecting the balance between sweet and tart, ensuring that the lemon flavor was bright without being overwhelming. Served chilled, it was an elegant way to end a dinner party, often topped with a cloud of whipped cream for extra indulgence. In an era that valued both presentation and flavor, lemon chiffon pie delivered on both fronts. It was light enough to appeal to guests watching their diets, but indulgent enough to satisfy a sweet tooth. Its cheerful color and delicate texture made it a favorite that stood out on any dessert table. Clam dip in the 1970s was a cocktail party essential, the kind of appetizer that seemed to draw guests like a magnet. Made from minced clams blended into cream cheese or sour cream, it was seasoned with lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce, and a hint of garlic. Served chilled with an array of crackers, chips, or crudités, it provided a rich, briny contrast to the other finger foods on offer. It was a dish that managed to be both sophisticated and accessible, appealing to seafood lovers and the simply curious alike. Many hosts appreciated how quickly it could be assembled, often just minutes before guests arrived. In the 1970s, when entertaining at home was often a regular weekend event, having a reliable, crowd-pleasing dip in the repertoire was invaluable. Clam dip's creamy base and subtle seafood flavor made it stand out without overpowering other flavors on the table. Paired with a crisp white wine or a classic cocktail, it set the tone for a relaxed yet polished gathering. For many, it is still a taste that instantly recalls the hum of conversation and the clink of glasses from decades past. Cabbage soup in the 1970s was one of those dishes that managed to be both humble and versatile, making it a staple in many households. It was a light yet filling option, often simmered slowly with onions, carrots, celery, and a gentle seasoning of herbs to bring out its natural sweetness. Some families added diced potatoes or tomatoes for extra body, while others kept it simple for a more delicate flavor. This soup was perfect for stretching a budget, as cabbage was inexpensive and widely available in grocery stores and backyard gardens alike. It also aligned with the decades' growing interest in lighter eating, often being promoted in diet plans and magazine articles promising quick results. But beyond its use in fad diets, cabbage soup was also a comforting weeknight meal, especially when served with warm bread or rolls. Its aroma filled the kitchen with a sense of hominess, and its ease of preparation meant it could be left to simmer while other tasks were done. In a time when convenience and health were becoming equal priorities, cabbage soup struck a balance, offering nourishment without fuss. It was a dish that could be adapted endlessly, yet never lost its straightforward charm. Banana cream pie in the 1970s was a dessert that managed to feel indulgent and familiar all at once, a true crowd pleaser at potlucks and family gatherings. Its foundation was a flaky pastry crust or sometimes a graham cracker base, holding a silky custard layered with fresh slices of ripe banana. The custard was rich but not heavy, made from milk, eggs, and sugar, thickened to a perfect smoothness. Once the bananas were nestled inside, a generous layer of whipped cream was piled on top, often crowned with extra banana slices or a sprinkle of toasted coconut for flair. This was the kind of dessert that people anticipated all through dinner, a sweet and creamy finale that never disappointed. In an era when home baking was still a point of pride, banana cream pie offered a chance to show skill without requiring complex techniques. It held a nostalgic connection to earlier decades but fit perfectly in the 1970s kitchen, where presentation mattered as much as taste. Served chilled, it was refreshing in the warmer months, but just as welcome in winter, its sunny flavor brightening the table. Few desserts captured the simple joy of homemade comfort quite like this one. Corn fritters in the 1970s were a side dish that could bridge the gap between casual and celebratory meals. These golden, crispy cakes were made by mixing fresh or canned corn kernels into a batter that often included flour, eggs, and a splash of milk. The mixture was spooned into hot oil and fried until each fritter puffed slightly and turned a deep, appetizing gold. The exterior crackled with each bite, giving way to a tender interior dotted with bursts of sweet corn. They could be served alongside roasted meats, barbecued chicken, or even as part of a breakfast spread. Some home cooks added chopped scallions or shredded cheese for an extra layer of flavor, while others kept them plain to highlight the corn's natural sweetness. Corn fritters were a nod to rural traditions while fitting easily into suburban kitchens, offering both comfort and a hint of nostalgia. Their simplicity made them a favorite for home cooks, and their universal appeal meant they never lingered long on the plate. In an age when food was both a creative outlet and a social connector, corn fritters fit perfectly, satisfying without stealing the show from the rest of the meal. Shrimp Newburg in the 1970s was the kind of dish that elevated a dinner into something memorable, carrying with it a sense of old-fashioned elegance. It featured tender shrimp bathed in a velvety sauce made from butter, cream, egg yolks, and a splash of sherry, seasoned just enough to let the richness shine. The sauce coated the shrimp completely, turning each bite into a decadent experience. It was often served over crisp toast points, fluffy rice, or delicate puff pastry shells, each base soaking up the luxurious sauce. This dish was popular for special occasions, dinner parties, and holiday meals, where it stood out as a sophisticated centerpiece. While it had roots in 19th century fine dining, the 1970s brought it into suburban homes thanks to widely available shrimp and the growing influence of gourmet cookbooks. Preparing shrimp Newburg required attention, as the sauce could not be rushed, but the payoff was undeniable. The moment it was brought to the table, its aroma signaled indulgence and care. In an era when home cooks were eager to impress without straying too far from tradition, shrimp Newburg offered just the right mix of refinement and familiarity, a perfect showcase for entertaining. German chocolate cake in the 1970s was a dessert that promised indulgence from the very first glance, with its rich layers and distinctive frosting. The cake itself was moist and deeply flavored with chocolate, often enhanced with buttermilk for tenderness. What set it apart, however, was the frosting, a luscious blend of coconut, pecans, and caramelized sugar bound together in a creamy mixture. Spread thickly between each layer and across the top, it created a striking contrast of textures, from soft cake to chewy coconut and crunchy nuts. This cake was a centerpiece dessert, often reserved for birthdays, anniversaries, and special gatherings. Its name was a nod to Samuel German, who developed a type of dark baking chocolate rather than any direct connection to Germany. In the 1970s, it fit perfectly with the trend of richly flavored, generously portioned desserts that were meant to be shared. Serving a slice meant offering something unmistakably homemade, full of care and tradition. Each forkful delivered a balance of sweetness, nuttiness, and chocolate depth that kept people coming back for seconds, solidifying its place as a cherished classic in the decade's dessert repertoire. Green bean almondine in the 1970s was a side dish that felt simple yet refined, ideal for both weeknight dinners and holiday spreads. Fresh green beans were blanched until just tender, then sautéed in butter for a glossy finish and richer flavor. A sprinkle of toasted almonds added a nutty crunch that paired perfectly with the beans' crisp, tender bite. A squeeze of lemon juice or fresh herbs could brighten the flavor, making it as fresh as it was attractive. In an era when presentation mattered, it brought a vibrant pop of green to plates, balancing heavier roasts or casseroles. Home cooks loved it for being easy yet elegant, with variations like garlic or shallots for depth. Green bean almondine proved that elegance didn't require complexity, just thoughtful preparation and the right ingredients for a dish that left a lasting impression. Porcupine meatballs in the 1970s were a playful, hearty favorite that appealed to kids and adults alike. Ground beef was mixed with uncooked rice, which expanded as it simmered in a tomato-based sauce, giving the meatballs their spiky appearance. The rice soaked up flavor while helping bind the meat, creating a tender, satisfying bite. They were budget-friendly, stretching ingredients without sacrificing taste, and could be made ahead for convenience. Served with mashed potatoes, noodles, or bread for dipping, they became a comforting staple in many households. Their quirky name brought smiles, while their rich flavor kept them on regular rotation. In a time when creativity in the kitchen was valued, porcupine meatballs stood out as a clever way to turn simple ingredients into something memorable, delivering both nostalgia and comfort with every serving. Peach Melba in the 1970s was a light yet indulgent dessert, pairing ripe peaches, tangy raspberry sauce, and creamy vanilla ice cream. Originally created decades earlier, it regained popularity during the gourmet revival of the era for its elegance and balanced flavors. Peaches were often poached until tender, their sweetness contrasted by the bright raspberry sauce. Served in tall glass dishes or wide dessert bowls, it was as visually appealing as it was delicious. Home cooks appreciated its simplicity and seasonal freshness, making it an easy showstopper. The combination of warm fruit, cold ice cream, and tangy sauce created a delightful contrast in temperature and texture. In a decade filled with rich, heavy desserts, Peach Melba offered a refreshing, sophisticated alternative, proof that sometimes the simplest pairings could leave the most lasting impression. Bourbon balls in the 1970s were a holiday indulgence that blended sweetness, warmth, and just enough bourbon kick to stand out. Made without baking, they combined crushed cookies, cocoa powder, powdered sugar, and bourbon, rolled into neat bite-sized spheres. Their flavor deepened over a few days, making them perfect for preparing ahead of festive gatherings. With a rich chocolate taste and a grown-up boozy aroma, they were a favorite at adult holiday parties, often displayed on decorative platters with other seasonal treats. While their flavor was bold, their size made them easy to enjoy in moderation, or grab a second without guilt. Recipes were often handwritten, passed down, and only brought out during the holidays. In an era when home entertaining was an art, bourbon balls added sophistication to dessert tables, proving that some of the best holiday traditions could fit in the palm of your hand. Baked macaroni and cheese with breadcrumb topping in the 1970s was the ultimate homemade comfort dish. Elbow macaroni was coated in a creamy sauce made from cheddar, milk, and butter, then baked under a golden crust of buttery breadcrumbs. This topping gave it a crisp texture that perfectly balanced the tender pasta beneath. Some cooks elevated the flavor with additions like diced ham, sliced tomatoes, or a dash of mustard powder. It was a dish for both casual weeknights and larger gatherings, beloved by all ages. As it baked, the cheese bubbled and the breadcrumbs toasted, filling kitchens with a mouth-watering aroma. During the 1970s casserole boom, baked macaroni and cheese remained a standout for its universal appeal, affordability, and make-ahead convenience. Each forkful delivered pure comfort, proving why it earned a permanent place in family recipe collections across the decade. Clams Casino was a luxurious 1970s appetizer that brought a touch of coastal elegance to home entertaining. Fresh clams were shucked and topped with a savory mixture of breadcrumbs, bacon, diced bell peppers, and herbs, then broiled until the topping turned golden. The contrast of the crispy breadcrumb crust with the tender, briny clam was irresistible, while the bacon added smoky depth. Often served on a bed of rock salt to hold the shells steady, they made an eye-catching presentation. Preparing them required care, but the result was worth it, especially when they emerged from the oven sizzling and fragrant. Guests eagerly reached for them, savoring each flavorful bite. Clams Casino captured the decade's love for impressive appetizers that felt both indulgent and inviting, ensuring it became a dinner party classic that still sparks nostalgia today. Beef Wellington was one of the most elegant dishes of the 1970s, saved for anniversaries, holidays, and dinner parties where the aim was to impress. A center-cut beef tenderloin was seared, coated with pâté, often foie gras, and duxelles, a finely chopped mushroom mixture with shallots and herbs. It was then wrapped in buttery puff pastry, which baked into a golden, flaky shell that revealed rosy, tender beef when sliced. This was a recipe for confident cooks, requiring precision and patience. The dramatic reveal at the table made it a true showpiece, while the rich, layered flavors ensured it was unforgettable. Though high-end restaurants served it, adventurous home cooks embraced the challenge, seeing it as the pinnacle of refined dining. Today, beef Wellington remains a culinary icon of the decade, recalling an era when ambitious home cooking mirrored the sophistication of restaurant cuisine. Hummingbird cake was a sweet southern treasure that swept across the nation in the 1970s. Known for its tropical flavors and moist crumb. Made with ripe bananas, crushed pineapple, and chopped pecans, the batter was warmly spiced, usually with cinnamon, and baked into tall, tender layers. Cream cheese icing covered each layer generously, adding tang to balance the sweetness. It was a cake for weddings, church gatherings, and family celebrations, standing out from the usual chocolate or vanilla. Rooted in Southern hospitality, it was often baked in large portions to share generously. Each slice offered a perfect mix of fruit, nuts, and rich frosting, creating a dessert that felt both indulgent and comforting. Even now, it evokes memories of gatherings where generous slices were served on floral plates alongside coffee or sweet tea, marking moments that were meant to be remembered. Cornbread dressing was a beloved holiday tradition, especially in the South, bringing comfort and nostalgia to the table. Leftover cornbread was crumbled and combined with onions, celery, savory broth, and herbs like sage or thyme. Baked until the top was golden, yet the inside remained moist, it paired perfectly with roast turkey or chicken, soaking up gravy and adding hearty flavor. Unlike bread-based stuffing, it had a distinct sweetness and crumbly texture that made it unique. Many families prepared it days in advance, letting the cornbread dry slightly for the ideal consistency. Recipes were often passed down, with each cook adding their signature, perhaps sausage, boiled eggs, or extra herbs. For many, cornbread dressing was more than just a side dish. It was a symbol of family gatherings, shared stories, and the tastes that defined holiday meals during the decade. Chicken divan was a baked casserole that combined comforting flavors with a hint of elegance, making it a favorite for both family dinners and potlucks. It featured tender chicken layered with fresh broccoli, smothered in a creamy sauce made from mayonnaise or sour cream, condensed soup, and sometimes mild curry powder or sherry for extra depth. A topping of shredded cheese and breadcrumbs turned golden and crisp in the oven, adding both flavor and texture. The dish balanced indulgent richness with the freshness of the vegetables, making it feel both hearty and satisfying. It could be assembled ahead of time, which was perfect for busy households or hosts looking to prepare in advance. Served with rice or crusty bread, chicken divan often became the centerpiece of the meal. In the 1970s, it reflected the era's love of casseroles, easy to prepare, easy to serve, and always dependable. Steak. Diane was a restaurant classic that blended drama and flavor, becoming a memorable part of 1970s dining culture. Thin slices of beef steak were quickly seared, then flambéed in a sauce of mustard, Worcestershire sauce, brandy, and butter. The brief eruption of flames was part of the appeal, making it an experience as much as a meal. The sauce was rich, tangy, and full-bodied, perfectly coating the tender meat. While often reserved for upscale restaurants, adventurous home cooks sometimes attempted it, guided by recipes from cookbooks or glossy magazines. It brought European flair to American tables, echoing the decade's fascination with continental cuisine. Served with simple sides like potatoes or green vegetables, the focus remained on the steak and sauce. Steak Diane was not just a dish, it was a performance, remembered for both its taste and its tableside theatrics. Baked brie en croûte was a party centerpiece in the 1970s, marrying elegance with indulgence in one beautiful dish. A wheel of brie cheese was wrapped in puff pastry, often with a layer of fruit preserves or chopped nuts inside, and baked until the pastry turned golden and crisp. When sliced, the warm, molten cheese spilled out, perfect for scooping onto crackers or slices of bread. The combination of buttery pastry, creamy cheese, and sweet or nutty accents made it irresistible. It was a showpiece appetizer that required minimal effort, making it a go-to for hosts who wanted something both impressive and easy. Whether served at casual get-togethers or formal gatherings, it drew guests in with its aroma and presentation. In many ways, it captured the 1970s love for food that was as beautiful to look at as it was to eat. Apple pandowdy was a rustic dessert that celebrated the natural sweetness of apples without unnecessary embellishment. Made with sliced apples tossed in sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg, it was topped with a biscuit-like crust that partially sank into the bubbling fruit as it baked. Halfway through cooking, the crust was dowdied, or broken up to let the juices seep through, giving it a tender, syrup-soaked texture with just enough crispness on top. It was homely in the best way, meant for family tables rather than showy displays, yet still deeply satisfying. Often served warm with vanilla ice cream or a drizzle of cream, it offered comfort in every bite. While pies and cobblers had more recognition, pandowdy stood apart with its rustic charm and unfussy preparation. In the 1970s, during a revival of old-fashioned recipes, it found new fans among those who valued heritage cooking and the comforting flavors of simpler times. Crab Louis salad brought a refreshing taste of the West Coast to the 1970s dining table, offering a vibrant break from heavy casseroles and roasts. It began with crisp lettuce piled high and topped with generous chunks of sweet crab meat, slices of hard-boiled egg, tomatoes, cucumbers, and sometimes tender asparagus spears. Its crowning touch was the Louis dressing, a creamy, tangy blend with a slight kick that tied all the elements together. Served chilled, it was both filling and light, making it perfect for warm weather lunches or elegant luncheons. The salad's roots in early California cuisine gave it a regional sophistication, while its colorful presentation made it visually appealing. In the 1970s, it became a go-to dish for hotel dining rooms and upscale gatherings, representing a blend of casual freshness and refined taste that made it equally at home at seaside restaurants or stylish suburban dinner parties. Zabaione was an Italian dessert that captured the spirit of 1970s culinary curiosity, offering a delicate, frothy custard with an air of sophistication. Made by whisking egg yolks, sugar, and Marsala wine over gentle heat, it transformed into a light, mousse-like mixture with a warm golden hue. Its flavor was rich yet airy, balancing the creaminess of the eggs with the aromatic sweetness of the wine. It could be served on its own in elegant stemmed glasses, poured over fresh berries, or paired with crisp cookies for dipping. Making zabaione at home required patience and skill, as it needed constant whisking to achieve its perfect texture without curdling. In restaurants, it often appeared as a showpiece dessert, demonstrating both tradition and finesse. In the 1970s, it appealed to adventurous eaters who embraced European influences and sought desserts that felt both classic and indulgent without being overly heavy. Frittata with leftover vegetables was a clever way to avoid waste while putting a wholesome, filling meal on the table. Eggs were whisked together and poured over a skillet of sautéed vegetables, anything from last night's roasted potatoes to stray pieces of zucchini, spinach, or peppers. The mixture cooked gently until just set, sometimes finished under the broiler to give the top a light golden crust. Cheese, herbs, or even small amounts of meat could be added if available, but the heart of the dish came from making the most of what was already in the kitchen. Frittatas were quick to prepare, making them perfect for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and they could be served hot or at room temperature. Their adaptability meant that no two were ever quite the same, yet they always delivered satisfying flavor and nourishment. In an era when thrift and efficiency were valued in the kitchen, frittatas showed how resourcefulness could lead to dishes that felt fresh and intentional rather than thrown together. Paired with bread or a simple salad, they were proof that a handful of odds and ends could be transformed into something delicious in under 30 minutes. Tomato aspic salad was a staple of mid-century dinner tables, known for its eye-catching molded presentation and refreshing flavor. This retro dish featured a clear gelatin base that held vibrant slices of fresh tomatoes and often included other vegetables or herbs for added texture and color. It was prized for how quickly it could be assembled, usually requiring just a few simple ingredients and some time to chill. The aspic's firm yet delicate texture made it a contrast to typical leafy salads, offering a unique way to serve vegetables during gatherings or holiday meals. It fit perfectly into the era's fascination with molded foods, where gelatin was used to showcase ingredients in an elegant form. Despite its simplicity, the tomato aspic salad brought sophistication to the table and was often served as a first course or side dish. Its popularity reflected a desire for visually appealing, easy-to-make dishes that required minimal cooking effort. The salad's refreshing qualities made it especially welcome during warmer months, offering a light and cool complement to heartier fare. Tomato aspic remains a nostalgic example of vintage American culinary creativity. Hot dog roll-ups were a favorite kid-friendly snack throughout the 1960s, consisting of hot dogs wrapped in crescent roll dough and baked to golden perfection. This quick recipe brought together the comforting familiarity of hot dogs with the flaky texture of crescent rolls, creating an easy-to-handle finger food loved at parties and lunchboxes alike. The rolls were assembled in minutes, making them a practical solution for parents needing fast and tasty snacks. The appeal of this dish lay not just in its flavor but also in its fun presentation, as the wrapped hot dogs resembled miniature pastries that children eagerly devoured. It captured the era's spirit of convenience and family-focused cooking, combining processed foods in clever ways to satisfy busy schedules. Though homemade versions have become less common with the rise of commercial snack foods, hot dog roll-ups remain a nostalgic emblem of quick and simple 1960s comfort food. Peanut butter and sweet pickle sandwiches were one of those strange combinations that somehow became a regular part of vintage kitchen routines. You spread creamy peanut butter on soft sandwich bread, added sliced sweet pickles, and pressed it together. That was it. Quick, crunchy, and a little tangy with just enough sweetness to balance it out. It sounds odd now, but back then, it was a favorite for busy lunches, quick after-school snacks, or when there was not much else in the pantry. The peanut butter gave it richness, the pickles added bite, and together they made a sandwich that stuck to your ribs and kept you going. You would find this one scribbled in old recipe boxes passed around at church picnics or quietly tucked into Grandma's cookbook among the other quirky 10-minute meals. Families leaned on this recipe because it came together fast, filled you up, and used ingredients most people always had on hand. It might be forgotten now, but for plenty of households back then, peanut butter and sweet pickle sandwiches were a surprising lifesaver when time and money were both running short. Quick ham salad on saltines was the fast fix lunch that made diced ham, mayo, and a little pickle relish stretch way further than you would think. You chopped leftover ham, mixed it with mayonnaise and relish, and spooned it onto a stack of crackers. That was lunch, done in minutes and surprisingly filling. Old cookbooks loved this recipe for being cheap, easy, and portable, which is why it kept popping up in school lunch guides and picnic sections. You could dress it up with celery or onions, but most families kept it simple with just ham, mayo, and a little crunch. It might not look like much, but it worked when you needed protein, salt, and something satisfying without standing over a stove. The saltines soaked up just enough moisture, the ham salad added creaminess, and together it passed for lunch, even when the fridge was running low. Homemade pizza with canned toppings became a budget-friendly way to enjoy a special meal at home without paying for expensive pizzeria pies. Families would make a simple crust from flour, yeast, and water, then spread on tomato sauce from a can and layer affordable toppings like canned mushrooms, olives, or pineapple. Shredded cheese, often a blend of mozzarella and cheddar, was sprinkled generously or sparingly, depending on the budget. The beauty of homemade pizza was that it could be adapted to whatever was on hand, from sliced hot dogs to leftover vegetables, making it as thrifty or as loaded as needed. Baking it in the oven filled the kitchen with a warm, savory aroma that made everyone eager to gather at the table. Kids loved helping assemble the toppings, making it as much an activity as a meal. By using canned ingredients, there was no worry about food spoiling before it could be used, and sales on pantry staples often meant pizza night cost only a fraction of takeout prices. It was an easy way to turn an ordinary evening into something festive, proving that delicious comfort food could be made from shelf-stable ingredients with just a little creativity and care. Peach Melba Parfait was an easy-to-make dessert that layered peaches, raspberry sauce, and whipped cream to create a visually appealing and flavorful treat. This parfait celebrated fresh or canned peaches combined with the tartness of raspberry sauce, balanced by the richness of whipped cream or sometimes custard. Its preparation required minimal effort, often involving assembling the ingredients in glasses or bowls and chilling briefly before serving. Popular during the mid-20th century, the dessert reflected the era's love for elegant but uncomplicated sweets that could be enjoyed at home or social occasions. Peach Melba Parfait offered a refreshing contrast of flavors and textures, making it suitable for warmer seasons or as a light finish to a meal. The dish is named after a famed opera singer, adding a touch of sophistication to an otherwise straightforward recipe. This parfait remains a nostalgic favorite for those who remember its delicate balance of sweetness and tartness. Quick pickled onion rings were a tangy and crunchy addition to many 1960s sandwiches and salads, made by soaking thin red onion slices in a simple vinegar brine. This speedy pickling process softened the onion's bite while preserving their vibrant color and crisp texture. The resulting rings added sharp acidity and a refreshing crunch that brightened heavier dishes and complemented cold cuts and burgers. Popular at picnics, barbecues, and casual family meals, these pickled onion rings could be prepared in just minutes and stored for later use. Their ease of preparation and bold flavor aligned with the mid-century preference for quick, flavorful condiments that enhanced simple foods. While pickled onions remain popular today, this particular quick pickling method evokes a nostalgic approach to homemade, tangy toppings that defined 1960s American cooking. Cinnamon sugar butter toast was the kind of simple comfort food that could brighten up an afternoon in under 10 minutes, especially when there was not much else to work with. You toasted up some bread, slathered it with butter, sprinkled on cinnamon and sugar, and called it a snack. That was it. Quick, sweet, and surprisingly satisfying when groceries were scarce and everyone needed a little pick-me-up. It sounds simple, but back then, families leaned on recipes like this to stretch ingredients and turn basic pantry staples into something that felt like a treat. The butter gave it richness, the cinnamon sugar added sweetness, and the toast made it crunchy enough to feel special. You would find this little recipe scribbled onto old note cards, tucked into community cookbooks, or passed down through generations as a fast, affordable way to keep kids happy and tummies full. It might be forgotten today, but for plenty of homes back then, cinnamon sugar butter toast was the perfect fix for long afternoons and short grocery lists. Cracker Stack lunches were the shortcut every Lunchbox kid quietly loved, and every parent threw together when time was short. You took Ritz crackers, layered slices of American cheese between them, and tossed in some apple slices on the side. It was simple, salty, and filled you up without needing to cook a thing. Old Lunchbox guides always had this one listed because it hit that sweet spot between easy, affordable, and kid-friendly. Some folks swapped in peanut butter or ham, but the classic cheese and cracker combo stuck around the longest. It was not gourmet, but it got the job done. Quick, portable, and ready before the bus pulled up. It sounds basic now, but for families juggling busy mornings and tight grocery budgets, Cracker Stacks were a reliable lunch that needed zero effort to pull off. Zucchini fritters with sour cream became a summertime favorite in the 1970s, especially when backyard gardens started producing more zucchini than families could possibly eat. Grated zucchini was mixed with a little flour, egg, and seasoning, then fried until golden and crisp on the outside while tender inside. They were inexpensive to make, and even kids who claimed not to like vegetables would eat them happily when served with a cool dollop of sour cream. The rise of home gardening during this time meant that zucchini was almost always on hand, and this recipe was a clever way to use up the surplus without wasting food. Fritters were light enough for a summer lunch, but could also be served alongside meat or soup for a more filling dinner. The crispy edges and soft center gave them a texture that felt indulgent, even though they were made from humble ingredients. Sour cream added a tangy richness that balanced the mild zucchini flavor perfectly. Families loved them for their simplicity and versatility, often serving them hot from the skillet to the table. Baked macaroni and cheese cups were an innovative take on a beloved comfort food. offering individual portions that cooked quickly and were perfect for family meals. These cups involved preparing traditional macaroni and cheese, then portioning it into muffin tins or ramekins before baking until golden and bubbly on top. This method allowed for convenient serving sizes and faster cooking times compared to larger casseroles. Baked macaroni and cheese cups appealed to mid-century families for their simplicity and ability to please both children and adults. The recipe made use of familiar ingredients like elbow macaroni, cheddar cheese, and milk, combining them into a portable, visually appealing form. It reflected the era's growing interest in convenience and portion control without sacrificing the creamy richness of classic mac and cheese. This dish continues to evoke warm memories of home-cooked meals and innovative twists on traditional recipes. Bacon and egg salad wraps were a savory and filling cold dish popular in mid-century America, combining chopped crispy bacon and hard-boiled eggs with creamy mayonnaise, then wrapped in fresh lettuce leaves. This recipe provided a tasty, portable meal or appetizer that fit perfectly into the 10-minute preparation window many home cooks sought. The smoky richness of the bacon blended harmoniously with the soft, protein-packed eggs, while the mayonnaise added moisture and a mild tang. Wrapping the mixture in cool, crisp lettuce offered a fresh, crunchy contrast to the creamy filling, making the dish both satisfying and light. Bacon and egg salad wraps were especially popular for casual lunches, picnics, and cocktail parties, offering an easy-to-eat finger food option that was visually appealing and flavorful. This dish reflected the 1960s focus on quick, convenient meals that still felt special and satisfying. Though modern wraps have diversified widely, these simple bacon and egg salad wraps remain a delicious reminder of the era's inventive yet straightforward approach to fast cooking and social dining. Tomato and sugar. Open-faced sandwiches were one of those quirky summer snacks that showed up when gardens were full, money was tight, and lunch had to be quick and simple. You sliced a fresh tomato, buttered a piece of bread, sprinkled sugar over the top, and that was it. A little sweet, a little juicy, and ready in minutes. It sounds strange today, but back then, this was a familiar plate across farm towns and small kitchens all over America. The tomatoes were easy to grow, the bread stretched what you had, and the sugar turned it into a treat that brightened up long summer days. Families leaned on recipes like this when grocery lists were short, and mealtime had to be stretched with what was already growing out back. You would find this simple snack scribbled in old cookbooks, passed around at neighborhood picnics, or taught to kids as one of their first kitchen lessons. It might seem forgotten now, but for plenty of folks back then, tomato and sugar sandwiches were a fast, filling reminder of how far a little garden and a little creativity could go. Creamed corn and egg skillet was one of those weirdly satisfying lunches that showed up when the fridge was nearly empty and time was running short. You would grab a can of creamed corn, crack in a few eggs, and fry everything together in one pan. It sounds questionable now, but for families back then, it was warm, savory, and fast. Ready in minutes when kids came home hungry or dad's lunch break was short. It usually got served with plain white toast or leftover biscuits, soaking up every last bit of that creamy, buttery mess. Some folks added black pepper or a sprinkle of shredded cheese, but most kept it plain because that is what was in the cupboard. It was not glamorous, and nobody was putting this on a restaurant menu, but in old cookbooks it was listed right next to the Hearty Quick Meals section. That is how you knew it worked. Mushroom barley soup was a perfect way to bring depth and richness to the table without expensive cuts of meat. The barley gave the soup a pleasantly chewy texture and added body, while the mushrooms provided a savory, almost meaty flavor that satisfied without animal protein. Onions, carrots, and celery were often included, creating a base that built flavor with every minute of simmering. A bit of broth, homemade when possible, brought everything together, allowing the grains and vegetables to soak up the seasoning. This soup was popular among those who appreciated hearty, rustic dishes that could be made in large pots and reheated for lunches or quick dinners. It was especially well-suited for colder months, filling the home with an earthy aroma as it cooked. Mushroom barley soup proved that thrift and flavor could go hand in hand, and it became a quiet favorite for many families who valued resourceful cooking. Quick shrimp cocktail emerged as a popular 1950s appetizer that combined pre-cooked shrimp with a tangy cocktail sauce, offering an elegant yet simple starter. This dish required minimal preparation, as cooked shrimp could be chilled and served with a zesty sauce made from ketchup, horseradish, lemon juice, and Worcestershire sauce. The shrimp cocktail embodied mid-century America's fascination with easy entertaining and accessible luxury. It provided a sophisticated touch to gatherings without demanding hours in the kitchen. Shrimp cocktail's popularity was boosted by the growing availability of frozen and pre-cooked seafood products, which made it feasible for home cooks to offer seafood dishes more regularly. The cold, crisp shrimp paired with a flavorful sauce created a refreshing contrast that was perfect for parties or light meals. Its presentation in cocktail glasses or on platters added to its charm. This dish remains a classic example of mid-century Americana's blend of convenience and class. Chilled potato and green bean salad was a refreshing and popular vegetable side dish in 1960s America, made by combining boiled potatoes and green beans with a simple vinaigrette and serving it cold. This salad was especially favored during summer barbecues, picnics, and casual dinners because it provided a cool, light contrast to heavier grilled meats and rich main courses. The boiled potatoes offered a soft, comforting base that balanced well with the crisp, bright green beans, which added color and texture. The vinaigrette, typically made from vinegar, oil, and seasonings, brightened the dish without overpowering the fresh vegetables. Its tangy flavor helped cut through the richness of other dishes on the table, making it a perfect palate cleanser. The salad's quick preparation and ability to be made ahead of time made it especially practical for busy home cooks looking for easy but tasty side dishes. While modern potato salads often use creamy dressings, this lighter Tangier version remains a nostalgic reminder of mid-century American cuisine's preference for simple, vegetable-forward cold sides that complemented a variety of meals and seasons. Peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches were one of those simple little joys that made their way into school lunches, church picnics, and kitchen tables across America. It did not take much. Just some soft sandwich bread, a good swipe of creamy peanut butter, and a generous helping of marshmallow fluff right out of the jar. The whole thing came together in under 10 minutes, but it stuck with you longer than that. It was sweet, sticky, and packed with that gooey marshmallow center that kids could not get enough of. Adults loved how fast and affordable it was, especially when grocery budgets were tight. You would spot this recipe scribbled on note cards, tucked into church cookbooks, or passed down by word of mouth from one busy home cook to another. It was a sugar rush, sure, but it was also a reminder of the quick comfort food that helped families stretch what they had. Funny how something that fast and that fun could quietly disappear from kitchen tables over time. Some families swapped the raisins for nuts, dried cranberries, or chocolate chips when they wanted to shake things up, but the basic version stuck around for decades. You would find this recipe tucked into picnic cookbooks, school lunch guides, and old magazines promising fun, budget-friendly meals made with whatever happened to be in the fridge. It was not flashy, but it made celery a little less boring, and for families watching their grocery bills, that was good enough. Baked spaghetti pie was an inventive way to transform leftover pasta into a dish that could be sliced and served like a casserole. Cooked spaghetti was mixed with beaten eggs and cheese to form a firm base, then layered with marinara sauce, more cheese, and sometimes bits of meat or vegetables before being baked until set. Once cooled slightly, it could be cut into wedges, each slice holding together neatly for easy serving. This made it a great option for packed lunches or reheating later in the week. The baking process gave the pasta a slightly crisp exterior while keeping the inside tender and flavorful. Baked spaghetti pie allowed families to repurpose leftovers creatively, ensuring nothing went to waste. It also offered a fun twist on a familiar meal, bringing novelty without extra expense. For budget-conscious cooks, it was a way to make a small amount of sauce and cheese stretch across multiple servings. Paired with a side salad or bread, baked spaghetti pie was satisfying, economical, and just different enough to feel like a treat compared to the usual plate of pasta, proving that leftovers could be just as exciting as a freshly made dish. Mini cornbread muffins were a staple in many American kitchens, prized for their quick baking time and delightful corn flavor. These small individual muffins were made from cornmeal batter, often enriched with buttermilk, eggs, and a touch of sugar or honey. The muffins were perfect for accompanying soups, stews, or barbecue, providing a slightly sweet and crumbly side that balanced savory dishes. Their convenient size made them ideal for portion control and easy serving at family meals or gatherings. Mid-century home cooks valued mini cornbread muffins for their simplicity and the comforting warmth they brought to the table. The recipe's popularity also reflected a Southern culinary influence that spread across the country during this period. Mini cornbread muffins continue to evoke fond memories of home-cooked meals and traditional American flavors. Curried cottage cheese spread was a flavorful cold dish that blended creamy cottage cheese with curry powder and fresh herbs, designed to be spread on crackers or toast. This recipe emerged during the 1960s when Americans were beginning to experiment with global flavors, incorporating mild curry spices into familiar dairy-based foods. The result was a spread that combined tanginess, spice, and creaminess, offering a unique twist on standard cheese spreads. It was quick to prepare, requiring only mixing of ingredients, making it an ideal 10-minute recipe for parties or light snacks. This spread reflected the era's growing curiosity about international cuisines and the desire to introduce new tastes into everyday meals. While curried cottage cheese spread is less common today, it remains a fascinating example of mid-century culinary experimentation and the blending of convenience with exciting flavors. Canned chili over saltines was the kind of quick meal that got dinner on the table fast with hardly any effort, especially when the cupboards were running bare. You opened a can of chili, heated it on the stove, and spooned it over a pile of saltine crackers. That was all there was to it. It might sound plain now, but back when budgets were tight and groceries were stretched thin, this quick, salty, filling meal showed up on plenty of kitchen tables. The saltines soaked up the chili, adding crunch and making a small amount of food go a whole lot farther. Some folks dressed it up with shredded cheese or onions if they had them, but most kept it simple and practical. You would find this recipe clipped from old magazines, scribbled in community cookbooks, or passed along by word of mouth from one busy family to the next. It was never about being fancy. It was about keeping everyone full with what little you had. Today, it is one of those forgotten meals. But for plenty of homes back then, canned chili over saltines made dinner happen fast. Goulash with elbow macaroni was a hearty, crowd-pleasing dish that fit perfectly into the 1970s budget-conscious kitchen. Ground beef was browned with onions, then simmered in a tomato-based sauce seasoned with paprika, garlic, and sometimes a pinch of sugar for balance. Elbow macaroni was cooked right in the sauce, soaking up every bit of flavor while saving on extra pots to wash. This dish was ideal for stretching a small amount of meat across multiple servings, with the pasta and sauce providing the bulk of the meal. It could be served immediately for dinner or reheated for lunches throughout the week without losing its appeal. In many households, goulash became a go-to for family gatherings or church suppers because it was inexpensive, filling, and easy to make in large quantities. The paprika gave it a warm, distinctive taste that stood out from other pasta dishes, and its simplicity meant even beginner cooks could master it. Many families added their own twists, extra vegetables, cheese, or herbs to suit their tastes. The end result was always a steaming, satisfying plate of food that comforted on cold nights and stretched the grocery budget just a little bit further with every serving. Mock crab salad offered an economical seafood alternative popular during wartime when fresh ingredients were scarce and expensive. Using imitation crab meat, typically made from processed white fish, home cooks could create a creamy, flavorful salad that resembled crab salad without the high cost. This recipe was particularly valued for its affordability and ease of preparation, requiring few ingredients beyond the imitation crab, mayonnaise, celery, and seasonings. Mock crab salad fit into the era's resourcefulness mindset, allowing families to enjoy familiar flavors despite rationing and shortages. It was versatile enough to be served on sandwiches, crackers, or as a standalone salad, making it a practical choice for lunches and light dinners. The dish reflected how cooks creatively substituted ingredients to maintain variety and nutrition in their meals. Mock crab salad stands as a testament to the ingenuity and adaptability of mid-century American cooking during challenging times. Quick chili cheese dip was a warm, spicy appetizer made by combining canned chili with shredded cheese and heating briefly until melted and bubbly. This 10-minute recipe was perfect for parties, game days, or casual get-togethers, delivering a satisfying mix of smoky, cheesy, and spicy flavors. The dip was often served with tortilla chips or crackers, making it easy to share and enjoy in a communal setting. Its simplicity and speed reflected mid-century America's love for convenience foods that could be whipped up without much fuss. Using canned chili ensured the dip was budget-friendly and accessible to many households. Although chili cheese dip remains popular today, the quick homemade versions of the 1960s had a distinctive charm rooted in combining pantry staples into crowd-pleasing dishes. This recipe embodies the era's knack for hearty, flavorful snacks that made entertaining both easy and delicious. Tell us your favorite 1970s dish like this video and subscribe to keep the memories cooking.